Hey there. It's been a while, like 6 months, since the last time I did a video. I didn't think I was going to take that long a break, but man, it went quick. Like 6 months in a nanosecond. And it was a lot of, because the election was coming up, and finally the Trump is, Kobayashi Maru. Finally. But the disturbing thing about that, though, is 72 million. 72 million voted for the man. Jesus. So I had one of these come up to me upon the plane of death, these Trump guys. And that's who he was. He was that in my face upon the plane of death. See, look, I'm in over my head in this anyway, so there's no reason for me to try to hold back any more of the real truth here. But I do have a connection with the plane of death. I exist there as well as here. Even though that's something that's like pearls to the swine here. It's how it is. I'm trying to tell these. But nonetheless, this is absolutely true. And I think I might be able to prove it. But it would be, the way God tells me things. Like he tells me the story of Lazarus. He says, look, you can raise them from the dead. And if they didn't believe such things possible, they'll never believe they were ever dead. Nowhere in the Bible is that ever said. And yet, this is what God tells me. And he tells me this from my ears alone. Because from that I can gain an inference that what he's telling me is that I should be cautious about thinking I can change belief. And yet this is the drive for these videos. Well, I realize it's not to change the people of the present, because he's made it very clear that you all think this from that in your basic logic. And in that logic, there is not a platform for enlightenment. And that logic is rooted in your basic experience and consciousness. Being that of the day and night reality is still quite prevalent at this point in human evolution. So, once again, it's pearls to the swine. But when I was on, but I have to continue this anyway. Even though the present people of this time, the only thing they can comprehend is either life or death. They do not have the capacity to think beyond just that in this present state of history, because they're confined by that thinking. Day from night, right from wrong, good from evil, this from that. That's what confines everyone's thinking today. So what I'm going to say now, it really isn't for the present time, it's for the future beyond here. And that is that I exist in both places simultaneously. Well, not simultaneously, it depends on what you call simultaneously. It's my consciousness is also upon the plane of death, as it is here in physical form in the third dimensional plane. So with that, I had a guy, one of these Trump guys, come up to me upon the plane of death, and he says, "Get out of my way, faggot." And so I say to him, "Make me." I became aware that he had then turned from me and started to cry, because then it was his reality for him that he was no longer physical. And in that reality, somehow the force of will caused it's what I often refer to, especially on social media, some of the posts I've been using, call it the flames of perdition. Look, it's not like it's the lake of fire or anything like that, but it's more like how you bring a worldly identity upon the plane of death with you, as like a skin that at times there is like this divine presence, this force of wind, as a lot of times that it is. It's like the will of God is this wind upon the plane of death, sort of, at certain times. And it can, it's like how the skin of the spiritual skin in worldly identity is then burned off of you at certain points in time if it's an unrighteous one. And what we mean by unrighteous is such that how in touch with your true self that identity is. See? Because if you conform to someone that is not you, and then you bring that identity upon the plane of death and present that, in the very manner that this guy says to me, get out of my way, faggot, is what he tells me. So the flames of perdition, his skin then became the flames of perdition upon him as the flames of perdition then burned this worldly identity from him. And then from that reformed point of view in the darkness, he then yells to me. The only reason why I come up to you with that attitude was because you do not know who you are. So, that was his lesson to me in that way. So look, I know who I was for Christ in antiquity. I made a video about that even. But it appears as though upon the plane of death that's a little bit more significant than that. Well, but then again, I have told you what my true relationship to God is. Someone he did not create. But someone that he values deeply. Enough to then give me a dogma to then bring forward on this earth that is truly from him. See, as we did in antiquity, now it seems as though we're called again to do it here in this time. So, I've been trying to gather the words and all to tell you what God really wants me to tell you. And it is so not within the scope of the present people's minds to comprehend. And so therefore I'm fearful about putting it out. But it concerns resurrection and the truth of what is the actual reality of life and death and resurrection. So that in the biblical sense, pretty much, it's not like in the Egyptian sense where, your soul can be resurrected, but it's more in the kind of Christian religious sense, in the way that it was a message, say. So with that, I just have to find the right moment. But I ain't going to be in this video. So I guess the flames of perdition thing was about all I really needed to get across at this point, because I had made some social media posts that might have sounded as though I was advocating a divine judgment, which in a lot of ways I do, because I know where God stands. Seriously. As he says, you can raise them from the dead, and if they didn't believe. And the thing about it is, he also tells me the story of casting their nets a little differently than the way the Bible says it. Because he says to me in this very personal way, look, They're throwing their nets in the same way that they did before I met them, when I did meet them, is what he's saying. And in that, they did not change their basic beliefs at all, because they still threw their nets in the same way after they had known me for, 15 years, or whatever, how long they were, that Christ was. Because, his perception of calendar year was not really relevant. So there was no date, even though he would oblige me if I asked him. Same. Because I do have that kind of relationship. And that's the thing about it, the resurrection thing. Even that's real. Because it's life and death. And in that, you don't have the basic brain to understand that reality. So, you think the rapture's going to happen for you people? Think again. That's like the end of the continuum. When God then becomes someone other than God to live among us as. That's really where the end times really are. It's not like it says in Revelation. And then again, look, there is a lot of truth in the Christian Bible, and if one of these days I'm going to sit here and I'm going to show you all of it. As I've done before. I've done a video on Genesis. I've done a video on Exodus. Alright then. I know where I have to go next in these videos, and, well, yeah, stay tuned.